So a little bit about me. So I'm the founder and director of Animal Justice Project, and I've been fighting for animal liberation for over 20 years as an animal rights activist, and also working within non-profits across the UK, mainly within areas of campaigns and investigations. So I'm a zoologist with a master's degree in applied animal behaviour and welfare. I was originally specialising within my positions in the commercial exploitation of wild animals. So I've managed myself investigations on farmed animals and animals in laboratories in the UK, Africa, Asia, as well as carried out field investigations myself at aquariums, reptile markets, farms, European zoos and European circuses. So I established Animal Justice Project in 2014, but it's only been within the last 5-6 years that we've been carrying out work on farmed animals. So we've only been working on farmed animals since 2019. So our mission as an organisation is a society free from animal exploitation, and we work within 5 key areas to achieve this. That's undercover investigation, pressure campaigns, education initiatives, event organisation, and public engagement. So since 2019, we've carried out 19 undercover investigations. These include abattoirs slaughtering sheep, ducks, piglets, pigs and cows, intensive and free-range laying hen farms operated by directors of the British Free-Range Egg Producers Association, calf dealer yards holding so-called slaughter calves. These are the bull calves that aren't of any use to the dairy industry. Animal transportation trucks, livestock markets, a broiler chick hatchery, a multi-award-winning dairy farm, a zero-grazing beef mega farm, a zero-grazing goat farm owned by the director of the Milking Goat Association, and several intensive red tractor pig farms. So this is just some examples of the different animals that we have filmed, ranging from chicks to calves, goats, pigs. We've pretty much filmed every type of farmed animal apart from fish in the UK. So we use a number of techniques, for example, open filming, installation of hidden cameras, drone flights, surveillance, and deep cover. So we often use a mixture of all in each investigation. And some investigations take several months, like Oakland's Livestock Centre, which I'll talk about in a bit. And others take just 24 hours, which was, for example, Gressing Foods Abattoir. We tend to always use drones when we carry out investigations. We use them just to get different types of visuals to show the scale of the facility. And more recently, we've used drones for surveillance. So you can actually, and I'm sorry if you probably already know this, but you can actually fly small drones lighter than 250 grams, for example, Digi Minis, at residential, commercial and industrial sites without a license. So more recently, within the last 12 months, we've started placing workers undercover or deep cover. We've placed workers posing as staff in several facilities, including a pig slaughterhouse, on a chicken catching gang, and inside a colony cage egg farm supplying major supermarkets. Our investigations have often been featured in major media. We often have UK firsts, for example, chicken depopulation. They've been featured in every major news outlet and have had over 200,000 social media views. We've not been in the cinema yet, but our footage is featured extensively in the new documentary I Could Never Go Vegan. And without fail, on every single farm, slaughterhouse or market that we film at, we always capture illegal activity, prolonged animal suffering and substandard practices. Investigations can deliver justice through legal advocacy, serving as the factual basis for litigation and prosecution. So, for example, animal abuse or false advertising. Some notable examples of illegalities that we've filmed: calves being thrown down trailers before they were sent to slaughter, pigs hit with electric goads on an RSPCA assured transporter, shackled spent dairy cows at a slaughterhouse, calves left overnight in an abattoir lairage with no food or water, day-old chicks crushed by workers at an RSPCA assured hatchery, which was our last investigation, the catching of over 30,000 hens during depopulation on a free-range egg farm, with hens being held by the legs 9 birds at a time. We filmed official veterinarians failing to act against abuse and breaches within slaughterhouses. We filmed pigs beaten with paddles inside Woodhead Brothers, which is Morrison's major abattoir. So I just want to give a couple of examples of prosecutions that should have happened and that did happen. So prosecutions that should have happened. In 2020, we documented over several months 23 breaches of red tractor and DEFRA regulations at a beef mega farm in Northamptonshire. They included the neglect of sick and injured cows, physical abuse such as the beating and kicking of cows, and failure to provide proper care. Despite our efforts, authorities did not pursue a prosecution. But the tables were turned, and Meadow Quality, the calf trading company involved, actually went on to threaten us with legal action, which led to a prolonged legal dispute. So while Red Tractor initially suspended the farm, they reinstated it within a month. And we often find that with our investigations that they will be suspended, and then sometimes they're even reinstated by assurance labels within a few days. This is just a slide showing a cow at Berryfields Farm being hit with a bucket by one of the workers there. Another prosecution that really should have happened was Gressingham Foods Abattoir. In 2020, we filmed breaches within the slaughterhouse, including the hanging of live ducks for 14 minutes. The maximum time allowed by the law is 2 minutes, which is obviously still horrific, but 14 minutes. We also filmed 15 breaches of EU, UK government and Red Tractor guidelines within just 24 hours of filming. The CCTV following our investigation was seized by the Food Standards Agency, and we thought that there was going to be a prosecution, but the Crown Prosecution Service, which is responsible for prosecutions where criminal evidence is identified, failed to prosecute, saying that it wasn't within the public interest. And this was probably the most obvious breaches that we saw within a facility that we were filming. So we launched a petition. It was signed by over 70,000 people who were outraged that the CPS didn't act, but unfortunately it made no difference. That's just a shot of inside Gressingham Foods Abattoir where ducks are live shackled. So a report by Animal Quality in response to the Freedom of Information request showed that the CPS has confirmed that between 2019 and 2020, they actually carried out no prosecutions for offences under the Welfare of Farmed Animal regulations and the welfare at the time of killing regulations. So one other successful prosecution was Oakland's Livestock Centre, which I've mentioned. So in 2020, we filmed calf dealer Derek Whittle throwing calves off of trailer ramps, kicking them, starving them, pushing them and slapping them with clothing. We also filmed ear tag swapping and calves being left overnight inside a slaughterhouse lairage. So following several months of work really closely with Trading Standards, Shropshire and Advocates for Animals who are here, our legal team, we finally did get Derek prosecuted. So Derek is now banned from housing and handling cows and calves for 5 years. He received fines and community service, and we're working right now on a second prosecution from our footage. This is Derek Whittle in the abattoir. He just picked up those calves from markets and he was dropping them in overnight to be left to be slaughtered in the morning. Another successful prosecution was G&GB Hewitt Abattoir. So in 2021, we installed multiple cameras inside Hewitt Slaughterhouse in Chester. We filmed over a week the violent beating of cows, one for over 40 minutes, and I'll show you a clip of that in a minute. Pigs being cut alive, piglets thrown into the boiling tank still kicking, and sheep gasping while they're strung up. So we sent our findings to the Food Standards Agency, which are responsible for overseeing slaughterhouses in the UK, and they did prosecute, which resulted in £26,000 worth of fines for the workers and the slaughterhouse, and the workers did plead guilty upon trial. So sorry, this is not very nice footage, but it's only quick. So that went on for 40 minutes, actually torturing those cows before they went down the chute into the slaughter area, into the kill floor. So lessons that we learn, big business threats. We learned the hard way with Meadow Quality. In 2020, this calf trading company hired a top law firm to discredit our findings and remove themselves from any association to Berryfields, even though we knew that the cows on camera were from Berryfields, from Meadow Quality. So they wanted us to remove everything, anytime that we mentioned Meadow Quality on our video, on our social media, and in the press. So it was probably our first, the first time we've experienced an ag-gag situation. So they sent aggressive emails to myself personally, threatened about £100,000 worth of fines, threatened Animal Justice Project as an organisation. They sent emails very early in the morning and very late at night. It was quite a tense time. They threatened recovery of damages. And they also sent letters to press in an attempt to stop them from publishing the story. They were too late with the big nationals. The big nationals had run it already, and their legal teams were happy with the work, so they went ahead with it. But a couple of regional newspapers were bullied by this law firm, one of them being The Grocer, which actually threw us under a bus and published a statement by Meadow Quality. So we don't send them press releases anymore. So we recommend that you just get your evidence in order to save time down the line if you need to fight a case, because you never know whether the industry will come for you. So things like keeping SD cards of original footage safe, always try and run content past the legal team if you can afford one, and basically never say anything that can't be proven in court. And stand by your footage with conviction. Remember that any legal challenge can be a blessing in disguise, because obviously that will provide another press opportunity for you and your organisation. Fishing expeditions. So journalists don't like speculative expeditions, attempts to find evidence that someone has done something illegal or interesting. So always think about this before you go to press and get your story straight about why you actually visited that farm or that abattoir. For example, if you got information from a whistleblower, that's absolutely fine. So yeah, random visits don't go down well with press legal teams and could end up actually putting your media coverage in jeopardy. In reality, the reason NGOs film whistleblower alerts about malpractice, no links to suppliers of large manufacturers and retailers, random selection and advertised work opportunities. Just some more little hacks for legal justice. Just keep thorough logs of your footage down to the minute, in fact, down to the second. Use them to report to the authorities, DEFRA, the Animal, Plant and Health Agency, Food Standards Agency, and Trading Standards. Trading Standards are actually responsible for initiating the formal action, so don't forget about them if you are reporting to the authorities. Evidence and disclosure. The local authority is likely to consider admissibility and the reliability of your evidence. So that may involve assessing the extent to which you complied with evidence gathering requirements and how transparent you were in relation to disclosure, for example, signal messages. Be prepared to play the long game. If we'd have given up, Derek Whittle definitely would not have been prosecuted. But overall, we probably spent about 2 years on that case, and we think it was worth it. Derek Whittle is was one of the key dealers picking up slaughter calves around the country. So he was picking up calves at markets, at dairy farms. We filmed him picking up from a Muller farm. So knocking him out of the equation will have had an impact on the dairy industry. So remember that prosecutions are important, but the current legal system is set up, as we all know, to fail farmed animals. Between 2018 and 2020, fewer than 3% of UK farms were inspected. Upon receiving a complaint, only half of those farms were then inspected. And just 1 in 300 animal welfare complaints at UK farms led to prosecution. And this all comes from the Advocates for Animals and Animal Quality, the Enforcement Report, which is available online. So obviously we carry out investigations for other reasons. Exposing the truth to the public. Often investigations are the only time that these people will actually see what really goes on in farms and abattoirs. Inspiring change, inspiring activists to get active on the streets to educate and outreach on farmed animal issues. They provide content for campaigns, so your visuals will aid pressure campaigns on key industry targets, they'll aid your consumer awareness, and they'll provide a basis, as mentioned, for legal challenges. They'll help with fundraising. Donors and grant bodies like to see your work in the media. So particularly if that media coverage is followed by a high impact campaign. And I think really important, building expertise. It's important that we know what we're talking about. So, for example, with duck farming, honestly, I didn't really know much about duck farming until we launched the campaign against grassing and foods. So it really helps you become an expert within your field. Just some examples of content that you can use your investigation visuals for. Social media. This was a non-violent direct action that we carried out. We hung that big banner on the side of DEFRA offices in London. So that's one of our stills from the investigation. Obviously, print materials and for lobbying. And just some examples of all of our work that have used undercover investigation visuals. We've got ad vans, billboards, protests, vegan food giveaways, just general protests at farms and abattoirs. So problems you may encounter. Industry mistruths, for example, breaking and entering. This is something that we get accused of a fair bit. So we would recommend as an organisation to always carry out legal investigations, really to avoid industry backlash and the media hyper-focusing on the fact that you broke in or any damage that was caused rather than the animal situation, the animals themselves. Good communication with your field team based on trust. Good practice, things like always using GPS, always using maps, always using biosecurity, particularly if you're visiting multiple farms in one evening. And include in your press release that you entered through open doors and you use biosecurity. One company that has consistently gone for us is, as I've mentioned a few times, Grassing and Foods. So they have told the media some bizarre things about us. So the most recent is we caused ducks to be bowled over by other ducks because we filmed these birds in a terrible state on their backs, unable to right themselves. They've accused us of not helping individuals, which of course we did. They've accused us of stressing the animals by filming, which gave them a bacterial infection, which then killed the ducks. And the most bizarre one is when we filmed their lights on 24/7, which is illegal, they told the media that we had fiddled with their timers. I don't know how you would do that, but apparently that's what it did. The problem is that if they tell the press that and you don't get a response, that is what's going to be in the media, and it will potentially sow seeds of doubt in the readers' minds. So it's quite clever, actually. Obviously, I've mentioned if the industry does come for you, so do try and work with lawyers. I know you can get some free pro bono, some legal, some lawyers that will work with animal rights groups. So ensure continuity of evidence. Again, storing SD cards very safely in secure envelopes. Tape the envelopes up. Don't touch them. Don't ever watch footage from an SD card. Always watch footage from a hard drive. And again, just keep them in locked drawers, just keep everything secure so that if it is needed for a court case, then it won't be thrown out because you'll be accused of tampering with the footage. Keep a log of all communication and site visits. We're trying to get better at this and just logging every phone call, every email, just all our instructions to our investigators so that we have got a reference to it if need be. Request investigation and surveillance reports from your investigators. Blur faces in all press stills and video footage. And equally, the other side, if you don't want the press, or if you don't want, say you've got information that you're putting out on Signal, but you don't want that to be aired, then obviously just use disappearing messages, which is pretty obvious. Media bias. Recently, from our free-range egg farm investigation, we've had a couple of articles come out. The egg industry is quite distressed with us right now, and they're just putting out lots of articles, and the press are lapping it up, particularly things like Farmers Weekly. How farmers can avoid being a victim of vegan animal rights activists. So we're actually challenging an article right now in a Welsh newspaper who basically put out that we are subject to a police investigation, and yet the police have never contacted us. So we are challenging that with the journalists and trying to get them to pull the article, or at least update the article. Just always remember, obviously, that it is in the public interest to know what happens on farms and in abattoirs. People have a right to know because it is hidden from them. And often as mentioned, we film farmers and farm workers breaching the law themselves. This is just an example of one of the recent articles that came out. Again, Farmers Weekly, last month. It's just ironic because you're always going to see articles like this telling farmers to try and stop activists coming in, and there's never an article saying how they can avoid suffering or reduce suffering even. It's always very, very one-sided. One bad apple, we've had a fair bit from the industry where our findings are one bad apple, one bad farm, one bad slaughterhouse. They don't represent the industry as a whole. So we're trying to look at that more and more as an organisation. So we're trying to look at multiple farms, particularly linked to the same company, and really trying to be more strategic in the places that we film on. Multiple farms linked to one company and release those consecutively. But obviously, remember the fishing expedition problem. It's going to be harder to say that you received cruelty reports if you're publishing a load of farms. So just some media hacks. Again, sorry if these are pretty obvious, but don't go to the authorities too early. So we tend to send reports to the authorities when we know that we've got press coming. So we'll send it at the last minute. And that is really just to avoid, we know that the authorities are more often than not going to do anything. APHA don't even respond to us. But it's really to avoid the journalists going to the authorities and the authorities saying, well, we didn't know anything about it. Always offer an exclusive if possible, which means that the journalist is going to spend more time on that article, feel more valued, and put more effort into what they're writing. Invite the media along to visit the focus farm. This isn't something that we've actually done yet, but it's something that we're definitely keen to explore this year or next. Make the press make their job easy. So provide images with all the faces blurred already, video with no text overlay, provide clear and definitive retailer links as well. but do expect they will need to give a right of reply to farms, assurance bodies and retailers. So obviously just plan that in your release. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be a case of sending a press release out to the media, telling them there are these links, and then they'll just take that as factual. They need to obviously they need to contact the retailers themselves and give them a chance to respond. Just think about the quality of your video and images during your filming as well. It's nothing worse than filming on a farm, looking back in 2 months' time and realizing your quality isn't that good, and that could affect your press pickup. And just get your press release ready. So once you've got that exclusive, get it ready, get it lined up, get all your contacts on a sheet so that you're ready to send it out as soon as it breaks in the one exclusive media outlet, but not immediately. You don't want to be pissing off journalists where you give them an exclusive and then you just send it out to everybody within the next 10 minutes. So at least give them a few hours to enjoy the exclusive. So in summary, UK animal advocacy groups have collectively conducted over 74 undercover investigations since 2016. Of these, Animal Justice Project alone has undertaken 19 since 2019. So this means that our organisation has contributed over a quarter of all NGO investigations within the last 6 years, marking a significant proportion of recent efforts in exposing animal exploitation. Investigations are a critical tool for the animal rights movement. Without investigations, the animal agriculture industry can deceive consumers and go unchecked. And that's my dog, Greta. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Claire. We have got time for a few questions. And maybe if you just start with your name, we've got one at the back and then at the front here.
Hi, I'm Liv. That was really, really helpful. Thank you. Obviously very sad as well. You mentioned earlier that you should always talk about going in through like open windows and things like that. So I just wondered if you could expand more on what the exact sort of laws are around trespassing and what is classed as trespassing.
I mean, trespass is a civil offence, so it's nothing to do with the police. Trespass, there is nothing wrong with trespassing on a farm. As soon as you start breaking and entering, literally breaking and entering, that's when it becomes a criminal offence, and that's when it becomes aggravated trespass, and then there can be more serious consequences. So, for example, and we've been quite open about it with our egg farm investigation. Our investigators went in the pop holes where the hens are supposed to be coming outside. They just lifted them. We would never advise breaking windows or anything, not if you're working within an organisation, and that footage is for an organisation. And just be open about the fact that it was carried out legally and we're not the ones doing anything wrong.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you.
That was a really great talk. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'm really horrified that these official veterinarians allowed that to go on, because it said we take an oath. Like, doctors don't take a Hippocratic oath anymore. What we do, and we say we promise to uphold the welfare of animals under our direct care. So what happened to them?
To be honest, I don't actually know what happened to the official veterinarians, particularly in that slaughterhouse, Lairridge. What we do know is obviously they are supposed to be looking at the animals as they go into abattoirs, but we're filming them and we're finding that, for example, they're just there having their lunch or they're talking to other workers, they're not doing anything. I don't know whether there was any consequence to them personally, but unfortunately the vets, they're paid by the agricultural industry. We've just found that they just don't. Also the other thing as well is, once they do make a complaint, then the CCTV is watched. So it's just a lot of effort. I think I've just found that a lot of the vets on site just aren't doing their jobs properly. No, we haven't, but it's a really good idea. Everything that we do regarding abattoirs from the Lairridge Inn goes to the Food Standards Agency. So it's actually a really good idea to take that further as well. Yeah, I mean, it's shocking. As I said, we filmed. I mean, okay, the vet wasn't present in that footage of the beating of the two bulls for 40 minutes, but they were there for a lot of other footage. And in fact, that particular vet didn't actually step into the kill floor for a week, so she just stayed in the lairage. So she never even viewed, and so we were trying to figure out whether there was cameras that this woman was looking at elsewhere to see the kill floor, and there wasn't. So yeah, it's definitely an ongoing problem.
We are actually running in to run lunch right now, but I think there's still a couple of really valuable questions. So maybe can we just get a temperature check? If you're okay with staying for a few more questions, just give me a wave. Okay, if you'd like to leave and go have your lunch, that's fine too. Lunch is until 2, so you're going to still have plenty of time to eat.
Hi, thanks very much for your talk. It was really good. Just wanted to ask about pixelation and blurring of faces, which you mentioned at the end. This is something we see routinely when videos are released. Are there any circumstances in which you're allowed to show someone's face when they've, committed an egregious breach? And secondly, you mentioned you have a lot of undercover workers going into the slaughterhouses. Are there any circumstances in which those undercover workers would actually step in then and there to try and stop what they see happening in any way, and where do you strike that balance?
I mean, in terms of the blurring of the faces, I don't know whether Edie's in the crowd. Is Edie here? I feel like probably Edie. No, Edie from Advocacy for Animals would be much better positioned to answer that, actually, being a lawyer. But in terms of blurred faces, we do it as standard for press. So the only time I could imagine that it would be okay to not blur a face is if you were reporting on like somebody who's been prosecuted. Like, for example, if we were to put a story out now about Derek Whittle, because he's already been prosecuted, I would imagine it's probably okay to have his face. But I think certainly from our perspective as well, we don't want the focus on really on the individual. I mean, obviously we do, watching hours of this stuff, you do end up a bit of a vendetta against the individuals, but for us, we just try to widen it out as much as possible and talk about the whole industry rather than just one bad apples, one bad worker. And we often get that. We filmed an organic dairy farm in Bath, the Bath soft cheese, and again, same thing. One guy on the work, they sacked him, put it out in the media. He's gone. We're training the rest of the staff. So the second question is. It's a difficult one to be honest, it's fairly new territory for us in terms of actually placing workers as staff in places. But for example, unfortunately, with the chicken catching, which was very, very brutal, our investigator, the only thing he could do was film, because, it's breakneck speeds. They're in a shed. He's with these gangs, which they're not the kind of people you want to be getting on the wrong side of anyway. What can you do? I think it's one of those things, isn't it, of just trying to get the footage or trying to intervene. But we do intervene. For example, we filmed recently some birds, I actually can't say too much because we haven't released it yet, suffering, and we alleviated that suffering. But we wouldn't bother putting that in the press. It would just be for our own. So yeah, sorry, I hope that has answered your question a bit.
I think one last question, if that's okay with you, Claire.
Yeah.
Hey, great talk. What would you do in a case of an emergency if you've got, I know I've been to farms and found pigs seizuring on the floor. What do you do with that? Because obviously you're kind of then giving them heads up that someone's been there, and we don't really want to leave the animal suffering. It's a very difficult situation. What do you guys do? If you can't talk about it, I also understand.
Yeah. Well, actually, I used to work at Viva, and so I can only think we actually haven't had a situation at AJP where there's been an animal in such a bad condition that, there was blood spurting out, and, there's an animal that I think so. Basically, I'm just thinking back to Hogwarts, and in that situation, the police were called and the vet was called, and the investigation was over at that point, because it got to a point in the evening where there was an animal with so much suffering, where they were literally being eaten alive. We couldn't just walk away, and I think that was the right thing to do. So I think it really is an individual basis. I'm trying to think of a situation on one of our investigations where it's been like, right, cut the filming. I don't think we've had it.
Thank you.
Right, thanks, everyone. I hope you have a really nice lunch. Let's just give one last big thank you to Claire.
Thank you.